I disagree, Fraser responded. I'm helping you. If I hadn't gotten you out of the crowd just now, how long do you think it would have been until you were fish food at the bottom of the ocean? I can handle Hugh. You? Prescott scoffed. How are you going to handle him? Look, we haven't been formally introduced yet. But unless I miss my guess, you're Ryan's new boss, and also the Laplace family's good-for-nothing son-in-law. Pleased to meet you, Fraser. Likewise, Prescott. I've heard about you. I've heard you're a man who's mooched off his wife's family for the past 3 years. What makes you think you can take on Hugh? You're a little better than the dirt under his feet, Prescott questioned. Ryan reached back from the driver's seat and slapped him. Watch your words, he said. Ryan, concentrate on driving, Fraser said coolly. Prescott, I know you don't believe me. In fact, you're welcome to get out of this car at any time. But you were lucky to get away from Hugh's goons once. How long until your luck runs out? Prescott looked out the window, silent. I have no intention of getting out of this car, he thought. Strange as it sounds, I actually do feel safe in here. I got lucky booking a ticket on that boat. And then where would I have gone? Hugh would have torn the city apart looking for me, and he wouldn't have stopped there. Fraser had the skill to block my knife. Maybe he actually can keep me safe. Fraser, you're a good fighter, he said finally. But no one in San Clemente disobeys Hugh's styles and lives to tell about it. Even with Frankie's help, I don't think you stand a chance. That's where you're wrong, Fraser replied. I have no intention of fighting Hugh. Only a fool would meet him head on. I wouldn't put the Heaven Breakers at risk like that. Then how are you going to beat him? You're not thinking of taking him on publicly, are you, in the corporate world? Do you know who he is? How many assets he controls? That's an even more hopeless situation. Haven't you figured it out yet? Ryan interjected. Why do you think we came to your rescue? Ryan, you're overestimating me, Prescott said. I don't know all the workings of Hugh's empire. Even Travis Carlson didn't know all about it. Ryan was so shocked that he nearly let go of the steering wheel. Everyone in their line of work knew Travis Carlson's name. 3 years ago, he had been an unstoppable force in San Clemente. Every gang member assumed he would eventually become the big boss in the city. And then he just disappeared. Rumors ran rampant, but no one knew the truth of where he had gone or what had happened to him. Travis was working for Hugh? Ryan asked. Prescott shrugged. Like I said, you've got guts, but you can't take this on. Get me out of town, though, and I'll make it worth your while. I can pay you $50 million today. Think of it as payment for saving my life back on the docks. No, Fraser said. How much do you want? I can't afford much more. 100 million or 10,000. It makes no difference, Fraser replied. In the driver's seat, Ryan furrowed his brow in confusion. 50 million is an exorbitant price just to help someone disappear, he thought. And 100 million is even worse. But what did Fraser mean by 10,000? The number meant something to Prescott. He turned to Fraser, shocked. Who are you? He asked. How did you know? No one else was in the room yesterday, he thought. It was just my assistant and me. But somebody else kept topping my bid by $10,000. There's only one explanation. Fraser must have been the investor. But that's impossible. How could this nobody have so much money? You figured it out, Fraser said, smiling. Yes, I was the one who outbid you for the Robster Corporation yesterday. Well, the 100 million that Hugh used to play with you yesterday is just a drop in the bucket for him, Prescott said defensively. He refused to believe that Fraser could possibly be that rich. "Is it, though?" Fraser asked. He laughed. "You keep saying that I don't know what I'm up against. Do you? Why would Hugh want to kill you so badly? Was it because you took his money and ran? If it's such a small amount to him, why would he care so much about it?" Prescott closed his eyes and remembered the night he had just had. He hadn't slept at all, and he had jumped at every little noise. He knew Hugh was looking for him. Hugh's men had snatched his assistant and taken the poor man in for questioning, and Prescott knew it was just a matter of time until they found him. "He's right," Prescott thought. "That is a large amount of money for anyone, even Hugh. But look at this guy." He gazed at Fraser, who seemed completely unconcerned about the whole affair. "The way he's talking, he almost makes it seem like 100 million really is a small amount." Prescott's mind raced as he considered his options. In the end, he was left with only one good choice. "Okay," he said to Fraser. "I'll help you out." "Excellent," Fraser said. He knew that in the city's crime world, a man's word was his bond. He could trust Prescott. "Okay," said Prescott. "Now that you've saved my life and I've accepted you as my boss, let's talk money. I'll transfer you the funds that I took from Hugh. 100 million. If you get me your bank account details, I'll have it wired immediately." "There's no need," Fraser said with a wave of his hand. "You keep that for yourself." Both Ryan and Prescott looked at him, shocked. 100 million is not a small amount, Prescott thought, stunned. I offered it to him freely, and he's turning it down? At that moment, Prescott realized just how wealthy Fraser really was. When Natalia called, Fraser and his associates were sitting in the conference room at Mendelsohn Industries, discussing strategies to deal with Hugh. Fraser stepped out of the room to answer. "Where are you?" she asked. He glanced at the time and realized how late it was getting. "I'm still at work." "Sheela has invited us out to dinner. If you want to go, meet me outside." Fraser was shocked. "She's inviting me along?" he thought. "That's a good sign. But she thinks I'm at Frandotech, and it's only 4 o'clock. I usually don't get off work this early." He popped back into the conference room to tell the men something had come up, and then he hurried out of the building. Half an hour later, he reached the Frandotech building. He saw Sheila's car parked in front of it, and Natalia was sitting in the front passenger seat with a sullen expression on her face. "Fraser, why didn't you come down right away?" she scolded. "We're going to be late for our reservation." "Sorry," he apologized hastily. "There were a few things I had to finish up." Natalia clenched her jaw and looked out the car window. "The one day I get off work early and make plans with Sheela," she thought, "and he has to go mess it up. He's half an hour late." "What did you have to finish up?" Sheela asked angrily. "You're a security guard. Did you have to follow a very slow person to make sure they got to where they were going safely? It's like you don't even care about your wife." "It's not like security guards do a whole lot anyway," she thought. "Mostly they just stare out the window and watch cars go by, and occasionally they deal with a belligerent client. If I'd known he would be this much trouble, I wouldn't have invited him along." Fraser felt helpless as he got into the car. "I keep messing up when it comes to Natalia," he thought. "That's enough," Natalia said. "Let's not talk about this anymore. We don't want to ruin our meal." 40 minutes later, Sheela pulled up in front of one of San Clemente's most exclusive restaurants. "Come on," she said. "I've heard this place is amazing. We'll take a group picture later to prove we were here." The street outside the restaurant was full of people taking pictures of the facade. Inside, the restaurant was even more crowded. Sheela looked around at the full tables. "Natalia, we won't lose our seats, will we?" she said worriedly.
Don't worry, Natalia replied. We still have 5 minutes to make our reservation.
Sheela sighed with relief. She had chosen the restaurant, but Natalia had initially offered her the invitation as a thank you for letting them stay at her house.
It's only right that we take her out for a nice dinner, Natalia thought.
Natalia pulled out her phone and checked the online reservation.
They've saved table 47 for us, she said. Let's find it.
They walked along the corridor. When they found the correct table, however, they realized that it was already occupied by a highly styled woman of intermediate age.
Ma'am, Natalia said. Oh, I'm sorry, but we've reserved this table.
The woman glanced up at Natalia and raised one eyebrow. She felt a flash of jealousy within.
Look at that woman, she thought. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on my appearance, and it took me 3 hours to do my hair and makeup today, and she's still prettier than I am. You think this is your table? The woman asked spitefully. I don't see your name written on it. Go away and let me eat in peace, tramp.
Natalia flushed. This was their table, but she didn't want to cause a scene. Sheela had no such scruples.
Who are you calling a tramp? She asked. Look at you. You've got so much Botox in your face, it's a wonder you can even close your mouth to chew your meal.
Some of the nearby patrons, who were pretending not to eavesdrop, chuckled. The woman stood up.
You!
She pulled her arm back to slap Natalia. Natalia saw the hand coming and flinched. When the expected strike did not land, she opened her eyes and saw a strong hand holding the woman's arm.
Who said you could touch me? The woman asked Fraser angrily.
She pulled her hand.
Let me go!
Fraser let go just as the woman yanked her hand back. She stumbled backward and fell heavily to the floor, bursting into tears. The guests at several nearby tables gasped. The woman covered her face, humiliated.
They're all laughing at me, she thought.
Humiliation turned to anger as she tried to pick herself up off the floor.
Just wait, you three, she exclaimed. You're all going to pay for this.
The manager came rushing through the crowd. When he saw the woman struggling to stand up, his face paled and he hurried to assist her.
My apologies, Mrs. Becker, he said. Here, let me help you up.
You came at just the right time, she said. It's the fault of these three here. First, they wanted me to give up my table, and when I refused, they pushed me down. You'd better make this right, or you're not getting any more of my business, ever.
Anything to make you happy, Miss Becker.
He turned to glare at Natalia, Sheela, and Fraser.
Apologize immediately, he demanded, and then we'll figure out what to do with you three.
You've got it wrong, sir, Sheela said indignantly. She was the one that took our table, and when we politely asked her to move, she swore at us. And Fraser didn't push her. She tried to slap Natalia, and then she fell down.
Quiet, the manager said anxiously. Don't you know who this is? You've picked a fight with Sophie Becker, the CEO of Princess Sophie Cosmetics.
The nearby crowd exploded with whispers and speculation.
That's Sophie Becker? Someone asked. I've used her products for years.
I can't believe we're at the same restaurant as her,
someone else gushed.
My husband got me their exclusive set as an anniversary gift. It's worth several $1,000s.
Why doesn't that young man apologize to her like they asked him to? Doesn't he have any manners at all?
Natalia and Sheela were dumbfounded. What seemed like such a small matter had escalated quickly.
Apologize at once, the manager repeated, or I'm calling the police.
Why? Sheela asked. She was in no mood to give in to the entitled woman.
She's just the CEO of a corporation. What's the big deal? Natalia's also a CEO.
Natalia looked around, embarrassed.
Princess Sophie Cosmetics is a much larger company than Frandotech, she thought. I have a pile of their makeup at home myself.
Why are you being such an idiot? The manager hissed. You're just making the situation worse. Mrs. Becker is married to Malcolm Becker.
A fresh wave of whispering ran through the restaurant.
Have you heard of Malcolm Becker? Someone whispered. He was a Three Eyes lieutenant.
Not only that, someone commented, but they said he was one of the strongest members. There was some internal dispute involving a broken arm, and the Three Eyes abandoned him. What a pity. He could have been a big boss one day. If Sophie Becker's name had caught everyone's attention, Malcolm Becker's name kept it. Despite Malcolm's broken arm, his name still meant prestige and strength within the city. Sheela was terrified when she heard Malcolm's name. She tugged on Natalia's arm.
Natalia, what do we do?
She whispered.
I think we're in trouble now. We'd better just apologize.
Natalia was anxious as well, but she was also conflicted.
We've offended two big names without trying, she thought. And it seemed like such a simple matter. If this escalates any further, we might be in danger. On the other hand, why should we apologize? We're in the right here.
No, she said to Sheela. She squared her shoulders.
Mrs. Becker is the one at fault. If anything, she should apologize to us.
She stared Sophie in the eye, refusing to give in.
Are you crazy?
Sheela whispered. Still meeting Natalia's eyes, Sophie raised her hands and began to slow clap.
Good,
she said mockingly.
Very good. It appears that you're challenging both my company and my husband today. I don't care what that woman says, she thought. Even if she apologizes, she's not getting out of this that easily. Not when she's that pretty. She has to pay. Mrs. Becker, I'm not challenging you, Natalia said evenly. But this seat was ours to begin with. You sat here and took it without permission. Basically, you stole it from us.
A fresh wave of whispering started among the restaurant's patrons. This woman had just accused Sophie Becker of being a thief. Sheela stared at her friend, dumbstruck.
Where is she getting this courage? She wondered.
How can she dare say these things to a powerful woman with such an influential husband?
So you don't want to apologize?
Sophie grabbed a gravy boat off the table and poured its contents onto the floor.
You don't need to apologize. If you three lick all of this food off the floor, then you can go, and we'll put this incident behind us.
The restaurant was completely silent as patrons waited to see what would happen next.
Even if we were at fault, Natalia thought, this has gone completely overboard. Do you think you're being reasonable here? She asked.
Reasonable? Sophie sneered.
We passed reasonable a long time ago. Hurry up, I'm getting impatient. Or do you want me to call my husband to come down and see what he has to say about the situation?
That was not a threat to be taken lightly. Everyone knew gangsters dealt with situations the old-fashioned way, by eliminating problems. Natalia felt her resolve waver.
I could be in real trouble here, she thought. It seems the only way to put an end to this is lick this gravy off the floor. How else can we get out of here?
She felt like she was going to cry. Sheela was also on the verge of tears. She turned to Fraser.
This is your fault,
she scolded him.
Everything that's happened is because of you. If you hadn't pushed Mrs. Becker around, none of this would have happened. Why don't you eat the food off the ground?
Because Fraser had remained silent, Natalia had forgotten he was there. She sighed.
Oh, he just stood there, she thought, and let things get worse and worse.
Why don't you call your husband to come down? He asked Sophie suddenly. I want to talk to him. Everyone in the restaurant looked at him in surprise. Was this unassuming little man really going to take on a former gang member? Natalia glared at him.
I didn't want or need his help, she thought. And here he is, pouring oil on the fire. Fraser, she said, this is none of your business. Shut up and go home.
Very quickly, the speculation began swirling again.
Fraser? One of the patrons asked. If this is Fraser, then that makes her Natalia.
I wondered why he was acting so cowardly, someone said. It makes sense now.
I've heard about the Laplace's infamous no-good son-in-law. How could he come out and embarrass himself like this?
It's such a pity. His wife is so beautiful. She could do so much better.
Natalia and Sheela turned away, embarrassed to find themselves the object of such gossip. When Sophie heard somebody bring up Natalia's beauty, she became even angrier.
So, you're the famous Natalia Laplace, she said with cold fury. I've heard of you. You're the head of Frandotech. I promise a fair competition then. Your husband wants to talk to my husband, man to man. Fine. They solve this between themselves, and the winner takes both Frandotech and Princess Sophie.
Everyone in the restaurant was shocked. Sophie had called it a fair competition, but it was barely a competition at all. Princess Sophie Cosmetics was a huge, established cosmetics company. Frandotech was much smaller and newer, and the men competing for them were a former gangster and a house husband.
Mrs. Becker, Natalia said, let's not be hasty. We can sit down and talk this out. There's no reason to get our companies involved. Even if Frandotech were more powerful than Princess Sophie, there's no way I could agree to this, she thought. Whoever loses is going to lose big time. You don't accept my challenge? Sophie asked. Then here, eat all this instead. She grabbed a bowl of soup and a plate of breadsticks and upended both onto the floor as well, making an even larger mess. Natalia sighed again. Oh, I have no choice but to give in, she thought. This has gone too far, and it's just my pride that will suffer. As she was about to bend her knees, Fraser stepped forward. I accept your challenge, he said. Natalia turned to him, furious. She raised her hand and slapped his cheek. What do you think you're doing? She hissed. You say that like it's no big deal. What do you propose you and Malcolm talk about? And what if you lose? Have you thought about that? If you feel like playing hero, don't drag me down with you. I've never been so humiliated or in such dire straits, she thought. There's no hope of a good outcome here. This is just like when Prescott was toying with me, and it's going to end even worse. She doesn't believe in me, Fraser thought. But there's no way I'm letting her eat what's on the floor.
Hey guys, Fraser here. Listen to the full episode of Unraveling the Son-In-Law exclusively on Pocket FM app. Click the link in description to install the app now.